Hey guys, Chris here, and I'm a Ukrainian Canadian. Today is July 19th, 2023, and let's get to the news happening in Ukraine, shall we? So, most of you guys have already heard what happened Monday. The Ukrainians hit the Kerch Bridge once again. The last time they did it, it was in October of last year. And they not only disabled the vehicle section of the bridge, but also the railway section, which took months for the Russian engineers to repair. And yet again, we don't even know if that repair was good enough. So now the Ukrainians hit it again. Now, what some say, what caused this bridge to be destroyed was the unmanned sea vessels that Ukraine has. And so they launched a massive attack with these drones, these sea drones, and managed to disable part of the vehicle section of the bridge. And so this not only is a huge blow for the Russian logistics, because the Kerch Bridge is the weak link for Russia, but an important supply road, the most important supply road for the Russians in the south, right? Because they don't really have to worry about pushing supplies from Rostov when they can push them from a safety position in Crimea. So losing a section of this bridge is extremely important. And also the psychological blow that this has on the Russian tourists is massive. Now, it doesn't take a bright person to figure out that going on vacation in an active war zone is probably not the smartest idea, especially since obviously the Ukrainians have been hitting Crimea for the last year and constantly and frequently. So I'm assuming that most Russian people would be aware that this is an active war zone. And yet they went for it because, well, they're not very rational, logical people, but also because they were probably being told by the government that this is a safe oblast and the Russians can go there. There's no problem. Everything is safe. And now, as a result of that, you saw a 10 or 15 kilometer wide traffic line of Russians trying to get out of Crimea through Kherson, Zaporizhia, and Donetsk. So this is also good because this shows to the Russians the reality of the war, the reality that the war isn't that far away from you. And to think that this is somehow going to affect the Russians to oppose this war, I don't think so. But it's showing them the reality. And the reality is that you're very close to it. So this is great. The other news is that in Crimea, the Ukrainians hit a huge ammunition depot somewhere around the area of Stary Krim in here, as you can see. So there was a video that came out with a huge explosion and massive plumes of smoke coming out of this village. So the Russians have been storing ammunition here. So yet again, the Ukrainians continue pounding Russian ammunition depots and supply lines, which is extremely important because now they have a weak bridge, they have very fragile ammunition depots. So I'm really expecting and hopeful that by the end of the summer, the Russians will start breaking down in terms of their defenses in the south, especially in Zaporizhia. Now, this is about it in terms of my map update, but I'll get back to the map. So the other thing I wanted to talk about is, unfortunately, the Russians are massing or have massed 100,000 troops for an attack in Kharkiv. So this is reported by the Ukrainian military. So senior military officials believe that the attack may be a diversionary tactic to draw Ukrainians away from the counteroffensive. Obviously, the enemy has concentrated a very powerful group, more than 100,000 personnel, 900 tanks, and more than 550 artillery systems and 370 rocket salvo systems. So obviously, it's Russia trying to make Ukraine lose the initiative in the south, in Zaporizhia. They want to have Ukraine lose the momentum that they currently have. And, as much as I don't think Russia is going to be successful at really pushing the Ukrainians out of Kharkiv and getting extremely close to Kupiansk, this is concerning in the sense that, yet again, this will be distracting the Ukraine army. And of course, this will force some brigades to be repositioned in Kharkiv, because Kharkiv, again, the oblast, but the city itself is the second largest city in Ukraine. And we don't want a repeat of what happened back in February and March, where the Russians were, practically in Kharkiv and encircling the city. You don't want that to happen. So the Ukrainians, unfortunately, will probably have to reposition some of its forces down there to continue successful defense of the northern region of Ukraine. Now, the Institute of War confirms the fact that they don't think that Russia's going to be able at pushing out the Ukrainian forces. So this is obviously just a distraction, just as the same way as Belarus is also a distraction for the Ukrainians. You know, we can guess if obviously Belarus or even now the Wagner forces who are training the Belarusian army, because today Prigozhin came out with a statement that he's trying to train the Belarusian army to become the second best army of the world, obviously claiming that Russia's the first best army in the world. But we know that it's not only the training that is important, but it's also the experience, which the Belarusian army doesn't have. And that's the reason why Lukashenko has never went for it and attacking the north of Ukraine, because he knows that his army is just not capable of making a dent. So even if we know that these facts, we still won't take any chances at saying, well, we're going to leave a few soldiers, but, you know, we don't need to worry about it. We've already had that happen once, and we can't allow this to happen again. So unfortunately, this tactic might work in Russia's, for Russia in the positive way. So we'll see. I'll keep you guys updated in terms of the Kharkiv front, if there's any movement. So far, there's nothing terrible happening there, but it's possible and likely that the Russians could be gaining a little bit of ground there, but nothing meaningful. So in other news, now let's talk a little bit about the grain deal with Ukraine, which failed today officially. But this article, I want to read it out to you because I think that Turkey is next in position to reinforce its influence on Putin, especially Erdogan, who has been a very great deal maker recently, and he brokered a lot of good deals. The initial grain deal that happened last year, also bringing down to the table Ukraine and Russia several times in the early phase of this war, and also now, you know, some people might not be happy that he was kind of holding Sweden and Finland hostage for a certain moment for NATO accession, but eventually he proved NATO accession for both of these countries. So he's in a good geopolitical position. So let me read out a passage of this article. So the world learned that when Putin is cornered, he negotiates, as he did with Wagner's leader, Yevgeny Prigozhin. This incident is likely the first in a series of compromises Putin may be forced into the future. However, on July 17th, Russia made the announcement that it is withdrawing from the Black Sea Grain Initiative. And officially today, we have the news that Putin confirms that they're completely pulling out of the grain deal and that they, if any Ukrainian cargo ships was to travel through the Black Sea, they will consider it a legitimate target, unfortunately. So in this article, it says that the subsequent challenge for Erdogan lies in defying Russia once again and guaranteeing the uninterrupted operation of the grain corridor by utilizing the Turkish Navy to secure safe passages for ships. And I think that Turkey absolutely needs to secure Ukrainian cargo ships through the Black Sea. And Erdogan is in a very strong position. He just released Azov soldiers back into Ukraine, which infuriated the Russians. But what could Russia do about it? And what can Russia do when you have a powerful Turkish fleet far superior to the Black Sea fleet that the Russians have protecting Ukrainian assets? There's nothing that Russia can do because they know that Turkey is a NATO member. And by attacking Turkish ships, that will be a declaration of war, right? And so call Putin's bluff that they're going to be attacking Ukrainian cargo ships. But Ukraine needs that security assurance from NATO or from Turkey or from its Western partners, because again, I'm worried that following this announcement today from Putin, that there's going to be yet again a de-escalatory, position from the West. We can't touch Russia. Let Russia do what they want. As far as I'm concerned, the Black Sea is not Russia's backyard. It's not their territory or their sea, right? It's the sea of everyone, and everyone has the right to transport goods through the Black Sea. And yet again, Russia is weaponizing the global food security. This is food that was meant to go to Africa, Europe, several different countries, right? And this is going to impact us directly. Food prices, which are already in an all-time high around the world. Any of you guys have already seen the prices in the grocery stores. They're 2x, 3 times more expensive. And if there's a shortage of grains, yet again, we're going to be impacted. So this is not just some local issue. This is a global issue. And the West needs to ensure that Russia doesn't get to play the terrorist again and terrorize the world by weaponizing the food supply. That's my opinion. And I think that Erdogan, if he wants to be a strong leader and reinforce his geopolitical position, because obviously Turkey is in a wonderful position. Currently, they ensure safe passage of ships through the Bosphorus Strait. He needs to guarantee the safe passage of Ukrainian cargo ships that are feeding the world, literally. So I'm hoping that in the next few days there's going to be strong response by the West. And unfortunately, as a result of the Ukrainian strike on the Kerch Bridge, Russia made an attack of its own on the Odessa port, where there was the Ukrainian grain stored there in the terminals, and they destroyed about 60,000 tons of grain. And allegedly, if I remember correctly, this grain was meant to go to China. So I'm curious to hear what China has to say after the fact that their supposed ally has destroyed their food supply as well. We'll see. Now, last positive news is that the same day that the Ukrainians hit the Kerch Bridge, an Su-25, a Russian Su-25, crashed in the Krasnodar area in the Yeysk, city of Yeysk, or close to there, where the Russian tourists were also enjoying their vacation. And then they got to see Su-25 crash in the Sea of Azov. But the good news is that, being that they're Russian, they didn't have any compassion and didn't offer any assistance for that Russian pilot. They just let him drown by himself while he was trying to ask for help. So again, people on scooters and other tourist boats were nearby, but no one dared to come to his aid. For some reason, everyone stood and watched the pilot slowly sink while they were drinking beer and enjoying their day at the beach. So that's fantastic, in my opinion. That's one less pilot that's going to be hitting Ukrainian cities, innocent Ukrainian civilians. And okay, I'm playing devil's advocate here. Okay, it's fine. Maybe the civilians felt it was dangerous to venture themselves so deep in the water. But how come, any jet fighter should have some inflatable device? If a pilot ejects, he should have some safety equipment that is functional for him to be able to survive in the water, right? That would be only logical. But yet again, this displays the fact that the Russian Air Force, not only their jet fighters are breaking down on a monthly basis. Recently, there was a MiG-31 in Kamchatka in Russia that also crashed. And this is happening almost on a weekly or bi-weekly basis now, where jet fighters are constantly crashing. Their maintenance, we already know, is abysmal. The Russians have to resort to cannibalizing other jet fighters and very old parts to be able to repair their own functional jet fighters. And also, obviously, we've seen the maintenance records on not only jet fighters, but everything in the Russian army. It's terrible. So again, this displays the state of the Russian Air Force, which is positive, but we need to also remember that Russia has hundreds of jet fighters. And so I'm only hoping that this is going to happen more and more frequently, that the Russians just will be unable to maintain their massive air fleet after a certain amount of time. So that's the video for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed my video update. Please subscribe to my channel. I really, really appreciate it. I really enjoy reading your comments too, guys. You're such a wealth, of knowledge for me. I constantly read and I love hearing your opinions about everything I discuss. And I really appreciate not only your support for my channel, but also your support of the Ukrainian cause. I really believe in Ukraine victory. It's going to be for the greater good of this planet. So thank you for watching this video, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thank you and take care. Bye.